when I scored at Wembley, so when I scored in the JPT final. Now I'll say, yeah, I am going into coaching, but it's going to be the fun side of coaching. Honestly, I just think I was one of the lucky ones.
This is a Cinema Beats production.
I am joined by a very special guest, okay? Current defender at Bristol Rovers, Mark Little. Now, Mark's played in over 400 games in the EFL, playing for clubs such as Wolves, Bristol City, Bristol Rovers, Peterborough. It's a pleasure to have you with me today. First of all, Mark, welcome and thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Fantastic. Okay, so taking things all the way back then, start at like the start of your journey, thinking about before you even became a pro, I think one of the things which you always look forward to as a kid is that either that first pair of boots that you get or the first shirt that you get. Can you remember what that was for you?
No, I can't remember my first pair. I think they were hand-me-downs, to be honest.
Okay.
I do remember a pair of boots that I actually forgot my boots once before a school game. So I sent my mum, rang my mum, you need to go and buy me another pair of boots real quick. And she came back and they were 3 sizes too big. I remember those more validly than any other things. But I was given a Aston Villa shirt first. That was my first. Jersey, which led me to be an Aston Villa fan for about 5 minutes.
Nice. And do you still support them now, or no?
No, I moved over to Wolves. I was Wolves.
Okay.
I was Wolves just before I signed for them, and then signed for them, and I was there for a long while. So I'd say they were my first proper following, really.
Nice quality. It's interesting you say that about like sort of the first shirt you get given or you potentially almost support them. I'll never forget, the first one that I had, and bear in mind, I'm from London, so there's many teams in London that I could have had a shirt of potentially, but I remember the first one I got, it was £10 in Sports Direct, and I think it was one of those like clearance ones. At the end of every season, they have a couple in the clearance.
Kit man clear out, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It was a Blackburn Rovers one. Now, bear in mind, this wasn't when Blackburn were winning the league or anything like that. This is when, there was on the, again, no disrespect to any Blackburn Rovers.
So how long did you support them for?
All of about 30 seconds, probably a little bit shorter than yourself. But yeah, it's interesting. And like you said as well, even about the boots, I think the first pair of boots I got, do you know what? It wasn't even branded. I think there's just like a colour.
Whatever you could get,
But yeah, and again, I think everyone has sort of different scenarios. Some people, like you said, they get given them from maybe siblings, friends, however it is. And I think I never forget as well, when I coach people now, the parents always say to me, they're like, what does my child need? And I'm like, just bring them in trainers. But when you think about it later on down the line, you're like, oh, I need to have boots, I need to have shin pads, I need to have all of the latest kit. So yeah, it's interesting though. I think that's one of the first buzzes. So again, you started playing football, and did you start at a grassroots club? So before you
I played for my I just went to my local sports centre really.
Okay.
I'm from Worcester, so it was a place called Peterborough. It was kind of a big sports centre, a couple of 5-a-side artificial pitches, and there's probably about 4 or 5 large full-size pitches where back in the day, I remember on a Saturday and a Sunday, that sports centre was full. There was hundreds of people playing football, not just kids, adult teams and everything. So I thought when I was there, I thought, I'll have a bit of that, and then just kind of joined on to the age group, which was Peterborough Academy or whatever it was. Can't remember, to be 100% sure what the names were. I think it changed. Oh yeah, we got sponsored by a company called Brave then, so we were Peterborough Braves. Played. I love that. I that time of football was amazing. I loved it. Just playing with your mates. We formed a good set of lads there. Up until I went on to various trials then, and then I signed for Wolves at that point. But yeah, grassroots first.
Nice. And it's interesting you mentioned again about really enjoyable times, because I think, listen, don't get me wrong, everyone wants to make it as a professional when they're first starting out, and if you're fortunate like yourself to do so, then obviously you're overexcited about that. But I think, like you just mentioned about that grassroots setting where you're playing with friends, where there's no real structure, you're kind of told how to play a little bit, but really and truthfully, it's like, you want to win the game and you want to go out there and beat them, but you just have so much freedom.
It was just pure fun. That's what it was. If I wanted to play up front that week, then that's fine. And This is early, right at the start. Go and play up front this week. Oh, you're in the back this week. And there was no, when we were really young, there was no, how would you call it? I don't ever remember any like politics or anything like, oh, my son needs to play, or this lad's the manager's son, or anything like that. It was none of that. We just enjoyed ourselves. That all came in as you get older, and that's the stuff that's the negative side of things at grassroots. But yeah, like I said, I loved every minute of that. It was, and I was, every time I was at school, it was just how quickly can I get down there and play with my mates, really.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's interesting as well, because I heard something with Ravel Morrison the other day, and he mentioned about something like that. Like, you know, you finish school with potentially friends, and then you get to go and play with friends again in a football setting. It's almost like the ideal match. But interesting, you mentioned something there, because obviously, like I said, you're a defender, and I think, you know, when people are growing up, like, well, it's interesting because when you watch football, like, and I think there was a discussion about this similar on Clubhouse the other day, where someone was mentioning about, like, you know, what is talent? And often we think of people when they're on the ball, and you maybe think, you know, people who can go past 5 or 6 players, or people who, like, you know, your Steven Gerrards, who can ping a ball in from any distance. But when people think about defenders, there's often a lot of neglect with that. And obviously, you mentioned there initially, you know, you tried to go, or not tried to go up front, but you had a few games up front as well.
It was definitely a try. It wasn't a succeed. It was just a try, yeah.
But how did the defender element come about? Was that something?
You know, like I said, at that age, you were just finding your feet, and I moved around everywhere. Yeah. And then I ended up in defence. So whether I was playing centre back, there was no fancy European formations at that point. It was just a back 4. So I wasn't very strong on my left foot. So I was either playing right-sided centre back or right back, right full back. So, and that, like I said, I'm talking when I joined, I must have been 6. So 6, 7, 8, and then I'd say around 8 or 9. Then you kind of find in your position there. So I was always at the back there, 8, 9. 10, definitely a right back, play centre back if needed. Only centre. The reason why I was more on the right back is because I used to run around so much, and that's not like an attribute so much for a centre back. You're supposed to sit still, but I had so much energy. I was just up and down, so that was where I found my position, and that stayed with me all through my career because it's a position that suits me really. And I think I remember exactly what conversation you were on about today, like what is talent, but there's no point me trying to be a centre forward because I would like that's not me. What suits me is that position, and I think it's a gift when you get to academy football. If you've got players that can play in all these positions, they're just genuinely a really good football person. Then I think that's a gift. Like if you're a footballer, you're a footballer. I wouldn't put myself in a footballer zone. I'm a defender who can run around. That do you see what I mean? That's the difference. I see it. Which is fine because you can't have 11 players of the same people. You need different attributes in different areas. So that's how it works, and that's why the game's so beautiful, really. Yeah, no, 100%. And it's interesting as well because you mentioned about sort of like, you know, being able to be like sort of, you know, a footballer, somebody who can play the game. And it's interesting because, you know, there's a lot of time I have debates with coaches around sort of, you know, the versatile player versus the specialist. And the pros and cons for both of that. But then as well, looking at it on the flip side, very similar to like how England's come out with their DNA. Often now, I tend to not try and necessarily cater sessions or players to certain or specific positions at a young age, but more so I talk about in possession, out of possession and transition. And then kind of relating your game into those 3 areas. So, you know, rather than saying, I said at a really young age, we're talking, you know, you're a defender or you're a left back, you're a right back. It's, okay, well, what's Mark like in possession with the ball? What's he like out of possession? What's he like with that transition of winning or losing the ball? And I think when you break it down into those 3 sections, you really try and get a bit of a better picture about the individual because you can see what they're like in all these different sectors of the game. I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's exactly that's how you would work it out. You'd see where they are with that, and that's what I did between 6, 7, and 8. I didn't know it. I was just enjoying myself. But my coaches and managers and whatever, well, that's what they were doing. Right? It's like, right, this lad's talented. Where should we stick him? do you know what I mean? And and that's what happened. And you know, fullbacks don't get the most plaudits. Really, it's not the most desirable position. But if that's where it works for me, then that's where it works for me.
100%. And it's interesting you say that because I would agree with you, like, say, for example, a couple of years back But now,
Yeah.
everyone wants to be, like, I'd say fullbacks, but fullbacks, wing backs, everyone wants to be that. It's a new in thing.
It's come on now, mate. Definitely,
Yeah.
it's come on now. So my when I was watching my heroes say, it's an ongoing joke. Like, who wants to be a Gary Neville? Do you know what I mean? But they're not Gary Nevilles anymore. Do you know what I mean? They're more Trent. Do you know that's where it's changed now, and I'm getting the tail end of it. Maybe I wish I was getting it at the start of my career, like to be the fashionable fullback.
No, it's quality. And you mentioned obviously two names there, two big names, and you're thinking about sort of, again, they both have kind of different sort of games, but then again very similar as well at the same time when you break things down. Obviously, like you said, did you have a particular, I say hero, but somebody who inspired you when you was coming up? Because like you said, it wasn't the in thing. To be honest, you're across the whole back line, really. Being any defender, there wasn't really anybody who was obviously big players, but there's no one you'd look up to and go like, I can't wait to get out there and tackle like this person, or but was there somebody for you who, when you got that position?
This reason, well, Ashley Cole was one, because again, he was. I felt he was a bit fashionable. He would. I'd say that the first one that went into like the fashionable kind of zone. I feel I play similar to him, just like the absolute poor man. You know what I mean? Not saying I'm anywhere near his level, but but that obviously, how to explain, I played more like Ashley Cole than I would Gary Neville. But I was fascinated by the class of '92, like every one of them. Like, for every player in that class, plus the manager, if I was ever looking at managing, they all had attributes that, for me, if they were the best at them, like they were the. If any footballer, they could find someone in that team to kind of model themselves on, I believe. And that's where, so I kind of looked at a group rather than one particular player.
That's quality, to be fair. And I think as well, when you were saying it, I was thinking about something. I was thinking that actually, it's interesting. When people typically talk about like, their heroes or their inspirations, typically they will fit that person into maybe a similar position for them. But again, we're talking more fashionable areas of the pitch. It's more the attacking areas. But interesting, like you just said, I mean, if you're a young player coming through today, in today's day and age, I mean, obviously, don't get me wrong, they're attacking players. But you look at people like Marcus Rashford and you think, actually, take away the football side of things, just think of him as a character and, what he's been able to achieve as an individual. And actually, when you think and break things down like that, it's so interesting, because taking football sides away from it, because like you said, you're talented already. So, you don't need, and also your manager, your coach is going to tell you how to play when you're out on the pitch. So actually, when you actually think about the characteristics, they're the things which you want to take away. Are you sleeping right? Are you eating right? Are you training right? Those kind of things. And
exactly what it is. Like I mentioned, if you go into the class of '92, like, would you want to be like David Beckham and go into the fashion and be famous, all that sort of stuff, or do you want to be Paul Scholes, who would never speak to the press man? Like, there's different personalities there. So there's people that want to play like Paul Scholes, but are they really? Well, I don't know him personally, but from my like a quiet, reserved person, you don't know. Like that's where I looked at a group.
Yeah, 100%.
I don't think I've got the personality of Gary Neville, for example. I mean, but I would love to have his career.
No, 100%. And also, so it goes back to the whole thing of letting the talking be done with your feet, rather than it being necessarily the vocal end of seeing like you're more or whatever. So it's interesting. Now, obviously, looking at your career, you played for a few different clubs, and I have to ask you as well, what is it like playing for both of the Bristol clubs? Is there any sort of like crossover? I mean, obviously, both massive clubs. But how does it feel to play for both?
Honestly, I just think I was one of the lucky ones. I can honestly say that every day. Like, I have had absolutely no stick. All I've had is jokey comments that that's actually quite funny, and that's it. I haven't had anything nasty at all, compared to all the other players that have not just in Bristol. Any player that's like gone over to the rival. I haven't had anything like that, and I'm not 100% sure why that is. I think it was obvious at City. It was kind of they went up a notch. Like, I'm completely honest now, they went up a notch, and I had lots of success when they were down there. So I think they were just happy with my contribution to my contract length. So they had no qualms, and obviously I treated them all with respect. And then I've come into Rovers, and I'm genuinely trying to get them and do the same thing as what I did at City with them as well. And that's what I'm here to do. And I think if that was to happen, the Rovers fans would be very, very happy with that. And I think that goes a little bit towards it. Do you know what I mean? I didn't leave City in a huff, and I didn't. I actually chose to come to Rovers. It wasn't like, I haven't got anywhere else, I'm just going to end up there. It was like, that's where I want to go, and I want to get the whole city in a higher level than football wise, a higher level and outside of football really. I just want to move it on. My contribution is move it on. So I think everyone who lives in the area is happy with that. I think that's how I got away with it really.
Yeah, nice. And I think as well, it goes back down to your personality as well. I think, sometimes you look at some characters, and when they've come out of certain clubs, or they might go to, they just do certain things, to maybe ruffle the feathers. But I think, just from...
I try my hardest not to do any of that stuff.
Yeah.
And they always say there's only one team in Bristol, and I'm not getting involved in that. If I'm out in the street, I'm not wearing a red or a blue. Like I'll just consciously keep away of it, because I don't want to offend anyone.
Yeah.
I love both clubs, so I wouldn't want to offend anyone. But like you just mentioned, it would be very easy to kind of annoy a lot of side, but it doesn't make any sense to me. Like if I live there, like I don't want to be upsetting my neighbour that side, but be happy with that one that side.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think as well, listen, that's the reason why I asked you, is because there are two massive clubs. Bristol is a massive area within the country, and like you said, I think both of the clubs do deserve to be higher up the tiers, if you want to call it that. Just purely because, like I said, the size of the areas, and also the history as well of both of those clubs.
Bristol deserve a Premiership club, and it could be any. I genuinely could be either clubs. We're Rovers at the moment, we're having a bit of a nightmare towards the bottom, but I promise you, if they get all that right there, they've got everything in place to go up, and it could be any club, if I'm honest. Yeah,
100%. Well, again, like you said, you kind of gone there to help build that project, and help take the whole city, but obviously in particular at the moment Bristol Rovers, up through the tiers. And it's interesting because looking over your career, you have been a winner, or I'd class you as a winner anyway, in terms of getting promotion, in terms of the Football League trophies. What is that like as a footballer when you kind of become a footballer? Obviously you want to, number one, just become a footballer first of all, and then actually getting promotion and winning stuff. How does that feel?
Well, if you could ask that question to my managers or coaches, that would be fantastic. I was to point out to them, but I think it is for me. That is my competitive side. If I'm in my back garden playing my little boy, I'm winning. If I'm playing against my wife, I'm winning. If I go in training, I'm doing a 5-a-side, I'm winning, and that's all I'm about. I'm not about anything else. So I don't turn up to cup finals to come second. That's impossible. Yeah. So obviously it may happen at some point. I might lose a cup final, but it just doesn't. We ended up getting we got slapped recently, and I was just I couldn't get my head around it. I'm just thinking it's actually impossible to do that. Yeah. Because just how I'm built, and it is. Yeah, it's just. Of course, it comes with the teams that are with it. There's a group of winners. It's not just me dragging them up. But I hope that my attitude rubs onto the people next to me, and then if I'm at right back and my left-hand centre-back is in between me and Aidan Flint, and Aidan Flint's a winner. Do you see what I mean? That it rubs off in the team, and that you won't find. Yeah, that's what I think it is. It's just that's the way I'm built, really, and it will be until the end of my career.
Yeah, no, it's quality. And again, it goes back to the personal characteristics again, kind of like what we were saying about, taking things from, when you look up to somebody and you're inspired of somebody, again, like you said, if you are able to have that trait of wanting to win, and competitiveness is a good thing. I think there's, at a young age, a lot of people always criticize it, but competition, I think, is good. And something, again, which I mentioned earlier on, I think I mentioned about, competition can help to us to become better problem solvers and decision makers, because you're put into an environment where psychologically you're under so much pressure. But actually, the benefits of that, being able to make decisions quicker, being able to make more risky decisions, but be more confident in actually solving those problems, I think is such a benefit and a solution to you, not only in that moment, also long term as well. Because like you said, when you're going into finals and when you're playing in games which, you know, like you said, not in front of you, not only just the 11 players that are playing on the pitch or the whole squad, but then like you said, if you've got a big city like Bristol on your back as well, it's like, you know, there's so much external things going on and pressures which are there. So
well, it's good. It's a good pressure for me. Like, I know, like you say, whether I walk out the red side or the blue side, I'm doing it for the city, and I can't let them down. So what I do is I need to win. Like, there's no other way. The best way. Listen, I'm not the best footballer in the world, but I will do absolutely everything within my power to win that game. And I think that's what a lot of my managers have recognised, and that's why I'm saying this. If it wasn't for this year, I haven't played many games this year, but if it wasn't for that year, that's why I think that I've played so many games, because managers recognise that. And I just think that's such an important trait in a football club is the winning. And I do agree with what you're saying. You just take it in. You take it into every situation outside of life. It took me a while, but I had to learn to kind of leave it at the training ground or leave it at the stadium, because I used to, like, if I lost a five-a-side, like I'd still be screwing about it about 8:30 at night. And actually, am I going to win every five-a-side in training? No. So it's just, and then I'll come back in and I win the next day. No one will know. Like no one in my team would know that I've actually woke up, put my boots on, saying whatever happens today, I'm winning the five-a-side. But it's just how my head works, mate. I don't know. I couldn't tell you where that's from, but that's what happened.
Yeah, no, it's quality. And again, do you know what, sometimes, again, not all the times, and I know some people might really criticise this, what I'm about to say, but actually I kind of think that, you know, learning how to play the game of football is probably the last thing in terms of all of the characteristics and traits, because actually I always say now, if you're an athlete, well, two things. If you're an athlete, it's easier for you to already be an athlete and then learn how to become a footballer, in terms of that motion, rather than being a footballer and then learning to become an athlete, which is really pretty hard, if I'm being honest, depending on...
I think you just described my career there. That's exactly what it is.
but yeah, no, I think it's interesting. I think that, you know, like you said, being a winner, being competitive, and then obviously, you know, taking that in. And people don't realise, but there's certain things which carry throughout all of life, and it may just be more prominent in finals, or it may be more prominent when you're playing a game of football professionally. But when you look through things earlier on in life, you know, like you said, it might be, I don't know, when you're in school as a kid, and you know the lunch queue's there or something, and you want to get there first, not necessarily because you're more hungry, but just because I'm getting there first, but I'm going to get there before you.
That's what it is.
So,
exactly what it is. But then I can take that. For example, I can take that into business as well. Like, if I'm talking about my properties, I've got a few houses that I rent out to students, for example. Like, I'll be in my head, I'll be putting myself in a competition with one of my close friends who's doing the same. Like, I'm rushing to get more units than him, and he doesn't know. It's just, I know that's what it has to be. And yeah, that's that. You, like you said, you can take it into next. I had an example, it was a couple of years back up in Bolton. The scenario was I was playing. I said to my fitness coach, look, I need a bit more work here. Can you help me? And he said, right, well, we're doing 8v8s today. So instead of you playing where you need to play at right back, just run up and down, like do that. But I knew that, so I said at the time, I was like, yeah, that's a good idea. I'll just run around like mad. But then once we were like, I was out of position and we conceded, I was like, nah, that's not going to work, like, because we're going to lose here. So then I'm doing what I was doing previous. My fitness coach is going, what are you doing? But I'm saying, I've got to win first before I do anything else. And that's always stuck with me, which I didn't realise is the same. Like, managers can ask you to do this, they can tell you to do that, but it always goes back to, for me, doing what I feel is best with winning the game.
Yeah, and again, it goes back to the...
Yeah, that's fine. If the manager, the manager's the manager picks a team, and if it doesn't suit him, then that's completely fine. But that won't change it will never ever change my fact of what I think's best to win a game.
100%. And again, it goes back to that problem solving and decision making, because you're basing that on your previous scenario, situations, and experiences. And actually, really and truthfully, I listen, managers and coaches, I'm a coach myself, so, not to knock coaches and managers, but ultimately, like I said, they may set out a plan of how they want you to go out there and play, but ultimately, it's up to you. It is purely up to you. And, you're not going to obviously sacrifice a decision for the sake of like I said, you want to win. So you're making a decision based on confidence where you believe it's the right solution and thing to do. So ultimately, and it's interesting as well, because I always say to parents, so if I always compare football to school, and I say to parents, when their child's in school, you never have a parent standing in the classroom shouting the answers when they're having an exam, saying, it's A, it's B, it's C, it's D.
Exactly.
But when it comes to football, they're there. And listen, don't get me wrong, 100% parents are there to support their children. And of course, they want the best for them. But then they're not standing there saying, pass, shout, shoot, dribble. It's exactly the same thing. So
the moms and dads are not stood in the classroom telling the teacher what they should be doing and what they put. It doesn't happen like that. It's funny with that. Like you say, in football, for me, from a player's point of view, you don't get anyone coming to their place of work and shout. Like, I would never go into someone's office and scream and shout at them what I should and shouldn't be doing and shout profanities at them. But because they paid their 20 quid to come in, then that's it. They've got every right then to scream and shout whatever they want at me. So it is interesting that we just made.
Yeah, might have to go.
It is what it is. The point probably is football's a lot more passionate than majority of classrooms. There might be a few good classrooms, but majority of classrooms that I've found, there's not much passion in them.
Yeah, no, 100%. I was going to say as well, you're probably going to have to go into an office and shout Control Delete or something like that.
It's not. I don't have any desire ever to do that.
but obviously, going back to the football side of things. So like I said, I personally believe that you've been a winner, and I think it comes out within your competitive side, and obviously you're still playing the game and you've still got many more years left in you. But if you was to kind of look overall so far, would there be sort of a standout moment or a highlighted moment which for you've kind of almost been like pinching your skin and gone, wow, I can't believe this, whether it was winning something or whether it was just a moment maybe?
My dream was kind of to win. I believe winning a league is optimal, because you can win a cup through a bit of momentum and a bit of, I hate using the word because you make your own luck, but a bit of luck. You can't win a league, luckily. You have to go and earn that. There's a shadow of a doubt for the amount of games you have to go. So I always thought that would be the thing. But when I won the league with City, we'd already smashed it. Like we had like 5 or 6 games to go. So the climax kind of went a little bit. So a playoff win is huge, absolutely huge, because not only are you helping the club, helping the fans, doing all that sort of stuff, getting the club to you've achieved what you set out at the start of the season. So you had a full year of achieving something. Usually it would affect my personal family because there's a pay rise and that sort of stuff. So again, that a couple of promotions that I've had have been, 3 promotions that I've had is massive for my family. But when then going back to where you said, like, the moment where you pinch yourself is probably when I scored at Wembley. So when I scored in the JPT final, that was ridiculous, because I would have never, as we go back to the start, like I said, I'm a right back. So it's not, I would never ever have dreamed to be, all my head would have been, right, I'm going to play like Ashley Cole one day and get it, like you say, tackle like Ashley Cole. I would have never been, I'm Thierry Henry nodding one in at the back stick. Like, it never ever be that. So when it happened, it was like, I can't believe I've just done that. That's absolutely crazy. And I like checked the linesman a couple of times to make sure it was. Check my mates were coming to celebrate and not getting back in shape for an offside or anything like that. But that happened, and it got confirmed, and that was it. And then, so then we won the game, we've won the cup, I've scored, and then when I'm doing the interview, they've then announced that I was man of the match as well, and then I was like, this is crazy. Like, this is absolutely crazy. So that was probably the standout moment of, if you had to pick one moment, it was probably that day at Wembley was the most memorable one. So
yeah, no, I think that's unbelievable as well. Like, you know, to be able, like you said, as a defender as well, I think, you know, scoring a goal just in general, I mean, I don't know what it's like from a striker's perspective. I mean, you know, some of them, you know, don't even celebrate. I mean, you know, probably score that many.
Yeah,
that
score that many, yeah. It's just
doesn't even mean a thing to them. Yeah, but, you know, as a defender to score, and like you said as well, in that game at Wembley, you know, it's so much of that emotion as well. I think that sort of drums it up. So yeah, no, great moment, and yeah, I think definitely one that stands out. Now, again, like I said, you know, you had a successful career so far, and obviously you've still got many more years left in you. But taking things all the way back, and I know you obviously said you was involved in football from a really young age, and obviously I know now that you're doing your coaching setup as well. But if you hadn't have become a footballer, what other career path do you see yourself potentially going down?
At the time, before I knew I was going to play football, the only thing I knew really is watching. My dad was the mechanic, so I used to watch him, and he wore me against it. And I said, "Oh, Dad, I'm going to go and do my mechanics at college or whatever." He's like, "No, you're not. Like, not a chance." It was, it's a hard job, mate. It's like it's
a graft as well. A lot of hours.
It's a graft, mate, and it's not like he worked in a Mercedes garage and everything was spotless and they all have their overalls on and gloves. My old man was literally lay on his back in the rain and all that sort of stuff. It was hot, proper graft. So, but that was all I knew. I didn't know anything else. I wasn't very academic, so I didn't think I was going to go to law school or anything like that. It would have been a manual job. It would have been a manual job. But then now, after football, I've really, really enjoyed business now. Like, it fascinates me, and I can relate to football now, whether that, like any sort of business, running huge businesses or even small businesses, how that side of things work. It fascinates me. So I think what would have happened is I would have tried a manual job and then ended up starting my own business, I think, as I got a bit older.
Nice. And it's interesting, again, you mentioned there about, you kind of mentioned a bit of the beforehand. So like you said, you potentially probably gone down that sort of more manual element. And I think a lot of people do think, you know, obviously, don't get me wrong, some people like working in offices and things like that. But yeah, like quite a lot of people, you know, they're like, well, I'm going to do a hands-on job. But I think what's interesting is what you mentioned afterwards is, you know, after playing or after being involved in football, you then kind of obviously been involved in, like you said, the property stuff and the business stuff. And I think it's interesting because I always try to explain, and really and truthfully, it was more of a defensive thing from a coach's perspective. But when I was trying to explain to, I think, a group of children, I think it was a college group, and they said, like, you know, what other things could we do if we don't potentially make it as a player? And I said to them, I said, you really need to break it down because, again, going back to that personal characteristics and traits element of things, there's actually so many things which are achieved through football within you as an individual. And again, just from listening to your story so far and taking things back, again, that's a success thing. You know, you want to start a business and you want it to succeed. Well, you do that within your football. You know, like you said, in terms of inspiring other players around you. And I know at times as well, you've been a captain. That's the leader in you. You know, it's those traits which actually we don't probably take for value, really. I think people probably often underestimate and go, oh, well, you're just a footballer or you're just a coach. You must only know about football. Well, no, actually, when you break it down and spread things out, there's so many other things.
Like you said, the characteristics and the traits that you say, of course, I've picked them up within football, and you're not just born with that. I've kind of recognised that and took those things on. But I do feel, like you say, like, I don't think I would have felt fulfilled if I was ever I don't think I would have ever stayed just doing a manual job, which obviously nothing wrong with it. My dad did it he's still doing it now, really. So that was my dad all day long. And then obviously when would I ever think that my dad would own his own garage or anything like that? No, because that's not him. My dad's just a grafter. He just works all day long. That's all it is. So I think with me, I would have felt that at some point, not back then, not at like, when would you start doing that? 15, 16, but mid-20s then, I feel that I would have took a different route at that point.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I think it's so interesting in terms of, because again, there is a lot of players who don't make it as well.
No, the answer is you never know. When my age, then I was going with the flow. It was never ever all I'm going to do is football, because I was always thinking, what if I don't make it? It was just, I'm going with the flow. I'm going with what, and at that moment in time, the best thing that I could do by far was kick a football around. So that's what I was going with. And luckily for me, I hate using that word. I keep saying it, but for me, that's what it worked out for me.
Yeah, no, it's quality. And again, even sometimes as well, and I don't know whether it's unambitious, but I say to, again, quite a lot of young players, try and get another sort of element behind your bone in a sense, do football, and that's absolutely fine. And listen, I really do support all these post-16 colleges which are out there. I sometimes feel that the issue with them is that obviously, again, you're holding on to that ambition of becoming a footballer for the next 2 years, which is obviously fine. Keep grafting, keep going at it, but the qualification which you come away from within is still within football. So it's very hard in that sense.
Yeah,
but,
I do agree. But I'm even on Clubhouse now. I'm talking to a lot of football educators, and it's such a hard topic because you don't know. You don't know. They'll be teaching a squad of 11 lads, for example. None of them all 11 are going to do different things.
Yeah.
And I'd say half of them are probably going to stay in sport. Maybe 1 or 2 might stay in football, and then the other 5 could be absolutely anything. There could be a law student there. I used to play football with a lad now, and he when I was growing up, like back in Perth as well, and he's got the highest degree in law or whatever. Now he's opened his law practice, and he's got people working under him and all that sort of stuff. But I wouldn't know that back then. I don't think he would have known that back then. Do you know what I mean? So it must be really, really hard, and I don't know the answer to that. And this is a question I ask these educators as well. It's like, if me personally, if I'm 100% focused on me being a footballer, is it right to tell them, no, actually what you need to do is be, I don't know, maybe 60% football and then 40%? I don't know, because is that telling someone not to chase their dreams?
Yeah,
but I completely agree that there should also be something else going on because of the just the facts. Really, it's not. There's only going to be a very small amount, it's 1% that actually get a proper career out of it. So that's obvious that there has to be something else in place. But I think that's going to be a never-ending question. Like, it's such a hard one to task, and you can't force anyone either. It'd be no good with me if my teacher said to me at that age, well, no, sorry, you're going to have to be 50% student, 50% footballer. Just wouldn't have worked.
Yeah, you just rebel against it.
I would just played up. I would just absolutely played up. I think the teacher recognised that and just let me do whatever I was going to do. I don't know whether that was my attitude. Like, I don't know, but that's what it was.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's a tough one to sort of pin down, but I think it's definitely something for sort of coaches and even players to think about. But again, taking it back to kind of the football side of things, something which you hear a lot about, and obviously you play for quite a few different clubs now. But when you're before a game and when you're in the changing rooms, and something which again a lot of unnecessarily, I think a lot of players get knocked for this when you see them walking in with headphones. But in my eyes, I truly believe that music. Like, I remember when I used to go to drive into work sometimes, and I'd listen to a certain genre of music, and actually it get me really hyped up. But I was like, I don't need this first thing in the morning. Like, it's getting me too hyped up and getting too carried away for the day, which I'm going to be starting. So I literally changed the genre of music. I've even started listening to like smooth FM, just so I'm feeling nice and mellow. Yeah,
genre is so important. That get you right up for it. You need to have just before you're going out the door. You don't need that, because when all the lads are, like you mentioned there, they're getting off the bus, they've only come from the hotel, so or wherever. So you don't need, because when the lads are jumping off that bus there, it's never a long journey, because they would have already been, they were in a hotel or just around the corner, so it's only a short trip. So you don't want to be listening to, you're still probably maybe 3 hours before the game there. You don't want to be listening to super get you going music 3 hours before, like.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Important. Genre's important.
If you could choose one, so again, if you were sort of in charge of obviously now things have moved on, but we'll call it an Orcs lead. If you was in charge of the Orcs lead,
the playlist,
what would you choose if you had to choose a song or a genre?
For me, I'm any sort of rap music where, and I know it doesn't make any sense, but it does for me, where a lot of rap music, they're rapping about how they get stuff done, how they hustle. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that gets me going. Do you know what I mean? Meek Mill, like, just
Yeah,
obviously he's
100%.
talking about stuff that I don't understand. I am not in the zone of gangster, shoot me this and steal this car and drug dealing. That ain't me. But the way they speak about it gets me going, and that's what I'd listen to. But if I am in charge of the Aux lead or playlist, I need to recognise there's another 11 players in this room. So you have to mix it up. I've done it before, so you have to mix it up. There's usually the goalkeepers, they'll listen to heavy metal, but they can't be listening to R&B soul when you've got a goalkeeper that listens to heavy metal. So you have to mix it. I actually got one of my DJ friends to make a playlist for Wembley. I think it was Peterborough when I won the JPT at Wembley. I actually pretty much hired someone to make a good playlist. It's important, mate. Anything that gets you going.
Yeah, 100%, and that's why I thought it was such an important thing to ask, because some people might laugh and go, "Oh, you're choosing that song," and I suppose as well it does create a little bit of banter as well, because people are like, suspect music here, but some people really like it. But I agree, from a selfish perspective, yeah, 100%. I'd definitely play someone like Meek Mills. I play like your Drakes. I play whoever it might be. There's a lot of like UK rappers who I listen to, and I'd listen to them. But like you said,
I can't relate to anything they're saying, but they get it going. But you'll find in a dressing room where there'll be 4 or 5 lads who have big earphones on, and they listen to their music, cuts out the dressing room one. And I think that's brilliant, because whatever works for you works for you.
Exactly that. Yeah, it's getting you into the motion. Because again, like I said, I could put on something that I like, you put on something you like, but actually, if it kind of distracts and puts people a little bit off their game, then it's such a tough one. It is such a tough one. But I think that that's probably why everyone gets their go or turn every so often or whatever it is, so that
this is at City, because we won pretty much every game we played. 9 times out of 10 we won. So there was no change of the guard. There was no reason to change the playlist. So we had a solid playlist from the start. It was actually Aaron Wilbraham did it from the first game we played, and it was the same one at the end of the season. We used to say it was the magic playlist type of thing. That was it. But when you say, for example, we'd put a playlist on, but then we'd lose 3 on the bounce at a different club, say for example, then you have to change. You can't carry on the same path superstitiously. So then the next person goes on there. But yeah, do lads think as deep about it as me? I don't know. If someone got recommended, they'd just be like, "Oh, I'll just get the playlist out of my car and put that on." But nah, I'd soon pipe up if it wasn't getting everyone going.
Yeah, 100%. And it's interesting you mentioned about the superstitious element of it as well, because I think when you break it down, I would think that as well. If there was somebody about it's because of that playlist that you put on before the game, it needs to change.
I think we lost about 3 games that good season, and I think we just changed 1 or 2 of the songs, like just a little bit, just tweak something wrong, and something that went wrong, and then we were fine, then back on track.
Nice. Like you said, good playlist gets the good results. But again, looking at kind of like your whole career and thinking about, like I said, you played for a number of clubs, you played obviously on some really good managers, played with some other great players. And when I ask this question, I sometimes think to myself that a lot of people will answer it based just on talent or ability alone. But I think kind of as this conversation's gone along, we've spoken a lot about personal characteristics and traits and sort of those individual things. So a mixture of all of that, really. If and again, you have mentioned, to be fair, that you played some small-sided games at training and things like that. If you had to pick your ultimate 5-a-side team of players that you played with, who would be on that side for you, and why?
5-a-side. See, that's different, because I'll name my players, but they're not my. They wouldn't. Those 5-a-side players might not get into my best 11. Do you see what I mean? So
100%. Yeah.
I play with Arun Otsuma at the moment. Ozzy, he's unbelievable in small areas. This kid's unbelievable. So he'd be first on the team sheet. I used to play with Mark Davis, which was another similar build type of guy when I was really young. Again, in 5-a-side, he'd get in my starting 11 as well, by the way. He's unbelievable. So there's 2. I played myself because I'd sit at the back and make sure no one lost. Am I allowed to pick myself? Yeah.
Yeah, of course, of course.
Who else? Do you know what I put in there? I put Kyle Henry in there. He was a captain,
Solid.
an absolute leader. Not liked by many because of how focused he was. He was like a Roy Keane type of character. Like, you liked him because of the presence that he brought. So I'd stick the governor in the middle. Then I played with Paul Ince, he'd be the other person to put him on, but I don't think that counted that much. I only played a couple of reserve games with him, so I'm not going to put him in. Myself, Ozzy, Sparky, Mark Davis, Kyle Henry. Then I need a goal scorer. Then I'll put Dwight Gale up front.
Okay. Because
Gailey had a knack of being in the right place at the right time all the time. Like, he wouldn't be doing anything fancy. He wouldn't be doing anything. He's similar to Tammy Abraham. Tammy was very similar. But I'm going to go with Gailey only because Tammy's attributes in 11v11 is the fact that he can do all the other stuff. But I think it highlights Gailey's five-a-side skills. So, how many have we got there? Me, three governors. Yeah, that's my team. That's my team there. That's my goal scorer.
That's quality. Nice quality five-a-side. And again, it's interesting as well, like you said, because typically people go, they'll mention all the best players that they played with in terms of just purely, again, kind of what the discussion we was having earlier on about purely based on talent, whatever talent is. But it's interesting, again, like you said, you've broken it down into those five-a-side and 11-a-side comparisons. And it's so true. Like, there's so many players which, it's not to knock them, but like, they're much better, like you said, in those small-sided spaces. And, bizarrely, when there's more pressure on them, when they have more time and space to think, again, kind of like we was mentioning about the finals situations where you're making decisions, problem solving, that when they have more time and more space, and when they potentially have to distribute longer balls, no, it's not going to work for them. And, even in terms of runs and things like that, like you mentioned, somebody like Dwight Gale, obviously, fabulous goal scorer. And like you said, he's always in the right place at the right sort of times. And, I think sometimes there's some players that get lost on bigger pitches because either they're constantly having to just keep on running around because, they're constantly looking for spaces. And it's tough.
Superb strikers, but they're goal scorers, but then they're wasted when they have to run the channels or they're outside of the box. I've played with players and I was thinking to the manager, why don't you just tell him to stand there? Just go and stand in the box. Let us do the rest. Like, we'll run around him and let him just get the nick and the kicks on in the goal. So yeah, that's why I think I played Tammy out of the team, because he's superb at doing everything. But his knack of, he's got the same level as Gailey, where he's in the right place at the right time. He tapped one in the week last week. I watched him on TV. Barnsley, just like, did he do much in the game? Yeah, he did his job all right, but is he in the right place at the right time? Yeah, bang, goal, win. They won 2-0 or 3-0 or something.
It's interesting as well, because you take things back to, like, when I was even playing grassroots football, and you think of, like, someone like yourself and somebody like Tammy, like you said, when you look at just like, what is a defender, what is a striker, you get those two sort of like models. Like you said, a striker, in my eyes, grassroots was, it wasn't, they never went round like 10 players and then went and scored. Maybe at a really young age when you had like one standout kid with ultimate ability, but ultimately it was get the ball, shoot, score, get the ball, shoot, score. Almost like the goal hanger. Defenders, like you said, it was like, simply you're a defender and you often don't go past the halfway line and you start getting a nosebleed or something like that. So yeah, it's interesting that, like, and then now we take it into the game and you're not taught not to do that, but it kind of goes out the window a little because you're given a bit more sort of tactics and, you're guided a little bit more in a sense. But yeah, no, it's interesting. But no, like I said, quality five-a-side team, and it's been really, really good trying to, get to know you better and understanding a lot about your journey and, certain decisions and actions which have happened along your journey as well, which is fantastic. So what is it now that you're doing? So obviously you still play out, but also, I mentioned halfway through, you've also got your own academy as well. Is that right?
Yeah, we've just launched our academy. I live in Swansea. and this is where I'm going to retire. So I thought this is where I'm going to start me putting my roots down, and I've always wanted to do an academy. It was because I just want to back to the days where I was at, like I said, at Purdy as well, the best, most enjoyable ways, and I'm confident I can get a group of young kids in and love playing football, and I can do that all day long. That's the type of thing. What would you do for free? That's what I do for free. But I also, like I mentioned before, love the business side of it. So that when people say, would you go into coaching? Previously, I'd say no, because what I thought the question would be is, do you want to be the next Mourinho, or do you want to be the next Alex Ferguson? Not really. I don't think that's what I'm cut out to be. I don't think I'm going to be a manager. So when I got asked question before, probably not. But now I'll say, yeah, I am going into coaching, but it's going to be the fun side of coaching. I'm not getting involved in any of the politics that go on and all the pressure and the stress and all that sort of stuff. I want to leave that behind. I'm going to get a group of kids, as many as I can in this area, and just teach them, pass them down the information that I know from my experience to make them better players first and foremost. But whilst I'm doing that, I know for a fact that I can keep it fun for them. So that's our plan. Unfortunately, COVID's slowed us down a little bit. We're 2 months behind, but with this vaccine going around, I think we're going to be able to open up the pitches soon, which I'm very excited about. So the next few weeks, really, we've got our we're planning for the Easter camp, so the Easter full term break it is. So we'll have a couple of weeks of kids running around, which I'm excited about. Got a garage full of equipment at the moment, just sat there waiting to be used and just waiting for the go ahead, really.
No, that's quality, and I think it's superb. Like you said, you mentioned, and I often tend to say this, that if you have somebody who's played the game, obviously number one, you've got the passion of just football in general, but again, like I say, even just through listening to your characteristics, traits, and things like that, I think that's always going to help to inspire the next crop of players, and also filter through, like you said, who you are as an individual, and pass that on to them.
Hopefully.
Support them. But no, fantastic. But listen, Mark, massively appreciate you taking the time to do this. Like I said, it's been really interesting getting to know you and hearing about your journey, and also hearing about, still got many more years left in you, but in terms of what's happening afterwards as well, because I think it's really inspirational for obviously a lot of people within your area, but then also as well just for other footballers to hear, and when they take this on board and think, what am I going to do, possibly going down similar routes. So no, like I said, I really appreciate it, and I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, I enjoyed it, mate. But honestly, without even bigging you up too much, that was one of the best podcasts I've done. It's a pleasure to do, mate. Honestly, it was.